I did lecture in Long Beach this past September on some of my experiences with the flying saucer and space people, and it's been a little while, so if I'm a little rusty, why please excuse me. Well, most people, the first question most people ask to a person that has had a contact with a flying saucer is, how did you ever get interested in flying saucers? Well, myself, I can say that my interests were sort of brought about through the encouragement of my father, who was a science fiction fan for many, many years while I was growing up. And I went off to the war, and when I came back, one evening he threw into my lap a copy of Fate magazine. He said, "Here's something that's really good. You should try and read it. It has all the latest dope in here on flying saucers." Well, flying saucers had an inward feeling to me. It meant something to me inside that I couldn't explain. It was a mystery. But physically or outwardly, I laughed. I said, "Oh yeah," just to go along with him. I was more or less what you might call a diehard. I read the newspapers and listened to the stories, but I never did too much reading. And I thought somebody was trying to pull somebody's leg all the time. Well, it was during this time that this happened in 1948. I planned upon visiting a friend of mine some mile and a half from my home, and it was such a nice evening that I decided upon walking. And going over, I gave this business of flying saucers quite a bit of thought, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind because I was very fond of my father, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't letting him down in any way. So my entire walk to the place was more or less taken up with flying saucers and thinking it over and just wondering what it was all about. And just prior to reaching this friend of mine's home, I saw a very large falling star cut across the sky, and then I said, yes, I suppose that is what people are seeing. But I dismissed the entire thought from my mind and went on into the home and greeted this friend of mine who I hadn't seen for a number of years. He was my rival. He married my school girl sweetheart, and I was sort of interested in seeing her too, and to make sure that she was really in love with him, I guess. And we had a very interesting evening, talking and discussing old times, getting together again, and making plans for the months ahead. Trout fishing was coming up in a few months, and we were both quite interested in that. And after several hours in the home, I thought I had taken up enough of the time, so I decided upon leaving. And I saw them yawning a little, so I knew that was the time for me to get out. So I excused myself and bid them goodbye and said I would see them again. I started home, and it was a crisp, cold evening, and there had been a little snow on the ground and a few rabbits out frolicking around, and that's about the only thing you could see. And while it's a short distance from the house, I thought this night, it's so beautiful, it's so crystal clear and everything, tonight would be an ideal time to see something, if there are such things as flying saucers. And at that particular moment, something caused me to look up, and when I did, I saw this streak of light coming toward me. It was coming at a tremendous rate of speed and was growing. That's how I knew it was traveling as fast as it were. And it came to within a couple of thousand feet. I'm not too good at estimating distances, but within a few thousand feet of me or over me, and hovered. And I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say or what to do. I didn't know whether to run. I felt a little scared. And I thought about running home and telling my father to show him. But I thought, no, I better not. So I stood and watched this object, and in doing so, I thought perhaps by sending a message to them through my mind, perhaps I could get them to come a little closer. And I tried this, but it just hovered there. And then I thought, well, maybe I can get home in time to tell my father about it, and he can come out and see it with me. And when I started heading toward the home in a pretty fast run, why, it moved right along with me. But it seemed as though it were getting smaller and disappearing. So I stopped again, and this object came down a little closer. And it never landed, but it was a sighting. It was something that I had never seen before. It was something that established the facts in my mind that my father was right all the time. I watched this particular object for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, and it played around in the sky and would almost disappear and come back down and make a sweep over the countryside. And in about 15 to 20 minutes, it did disappear. It went straight up, heading up into the Milky Way and out of sight. Well, I went on home and I told my father of this, and he smiled and laughed. He said, well, I myself had seen similar things going on around. We live in a wooded area on a hillside in the past few months, but I didn't care to mention it to anyone because I knew that everybody would think that I was maybe a little loose in the head somewhere. So he told me to keep it to myself. He said, don't tell anybody. So I didn't. But the following, I picked up his fate magazines, all of them, and I started going through them. And the following day I went to a neighbor we got our milk. We lived in the country. We got our milk at the neighbor's, and I went over to pick up the milk for the day. And the first thing that he said to me was, did you see that flying saucer last evening? Well, I didn't say yes or no. I just gave him a big smile because it confirmed the fact that I wasn't having any kind of a hallucination, that I did see something. And from that time on, flying saucers really did mean quite a bit to me. I took it seriously, and I gave it quite a bit of serious thought. And something inside of me seemed as though it were unfolding. I couldn't quite understand it. It's an experience that you alone would have to experience in order to understand how it really feels. And something was pushing me. I would have visions. If you were to call them visions, I would see what I would be doing a year from now. And at first I sort of laughed at them, but a year from then I was doing exactly what I saw a year back. I saw myself back into the Air Force with a mission, a purpose for it. And the time came when I quit my job and found myself in the Air Force recruiting station in the post office, finding out what I could do to get back into the Air Force, or to get into the Air Force. I had been in the Army before that. And it seemed as though I was in excellent condition and just the kind of person they were interested in. And up went another notch on the quota for that particular month, I guess, and I was back in the Air Force as an airman first class. And on my way to Washington, I was driving a 50 Ford at that time. This was the year 1952. I was headed toward Washington from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to my point, or to my base of induction was at Bowling Field in Washington, D.C. And as I was driving along, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was quite lonely. The roads, there weren't too many trucks or automobiles on the road. And my thoughts centered around flying saucers and driving down the road and thinking about flying saucers. And when I received what some people call mental telepathy, I think is the term they use, a message to keep watching the sky in front of me that I would see something. And whenever I would get something like this would pass through my mind, I would sort of laugh to myself and say, well, whatever made me think of that, or whatever made my mind say that to me. And in doing so, I saw this, what appeared to be a falling star, but it didn't fall. It kept on a straight pace across the sky in front of me. It must have been quite a distance out. And after I saw that, I also received this message to turn off to the first road to the right, that it would be down the road about a mile. And so I slowed down. I was doing about 55. I slowed down to about 35 miles an hour to keep looking for this road. Thought, well, I'll follow this and see what happens. And I turned down this road. It was an unused stony road, and I had a black Ford, and I was quite proud of the polish I would keep on it. And these branches in this road sure fixed that in a hurry, but I drove right on through. And I drove down quite a little distance, and in the immediate area in front of me, I saw this glowing object that I have drawings here of it. This top one's very similar to the Adamski type of craft. And it was hovering just a short distance above the ground. And I wasn't scared, but it was really a funny feeling. You can't say you're scared. It's something that you more or less always wished for, and then has happened. I guess like Christmas morning, I didn't know. But I got out of the car, and I thought I would wait for instructions to see if there were any instructions. And I was greeted by one who called himself Crextan. That isn't his name, but that is the name I give him. I can't pronounce his name, but it's very similar to it. I call him Crextan. And he greeted me by my name and told me that he was expecting this to happen, and that he had been responsible for the many things that I sort of would be inspired to do in the past few years. And that he invited me aboard his craft and told me he would show me around the interior of the ship. This first ship here on top is the one that he was in charge of. There were 11 people beside himself on board, and I was introduced to most of them. Some of them were busy. The visit wasn't too long, but he was more or less interested in convincing me that I was in a spaceship and that there were such things and such people. And I would say the visit lasted about 45 minutes to an hour. And we went around, and I saw many, many things that I didn't know what they were. It would be very hard for me to describe them even, because they were of such a fantastic nature to look at. Some of them appeared to be hanging right in the middle of the room with nothing supporting them. And there were chairs and stools that did have bases that run on little tracks, that one person would operate a section, or 3 people would operate it. If 3 people would operate a section while the tracks or the seats were stationary, if one person operated this particular section, 2 of the seats would be taken out, and the other one was on a track, and there would be no walking back and forth. They would just slide along, and this was done by some kind of buttons on this tremendous dashboard that they had on this here. And each operator, he was very specific about telling me how the ship was operated, that each operator, or one operator controlling 3 portions of the ship, or one operator controlling 1 portion of the ship, that there were 3 people in this one section, was responsible for 1 section of that ship, and it required, there were 11 sections of the ship. And at any time, 3 of the sections were disengaged from their type of fuel, which is a sort of an electronical magnetic device that is pulled in from the atmosphere into a magnetron and produced within the ship itself, it would shut off this here one section of the ship, and it would immediately do a right angle. I mean, if they intended in going in a right angle, they would just disengage that one section of the ship, and it would gravity or whatever, the propulsion or whatever it is, would swing it in that direction. It was quite interesting. They had very, very elaborate bedrooms. There were 3 of them on board, and very, very nicely furnished. They had storerooms, and they had one room for food and food preparation, and one room was for supplies, equipment, mechanical equipment, and things of that nature. And it was, all in all, it was a very fascinating experience, and I have it related in detail in a book that I'm about ready to send to the publishers before too long. I hope so, anyhow. It will be titled "The Night Has 1,000 Saucers," and I will tell of my many experiences with people who have had contacts and people who work with saucers and do saucer research, and some of the crazy things that has happened to me in my life, not only saucers. And then he said that they were running out of time, that they had to get going, and that it was best for me to be going also. So I left him, and he said that he would be in contact with me constantly, mentally. Well, at that particular time, it was just another word or a way of talking. I didn't understand it. He said that it was necessary that I be of service to them, that I would be of service to them. And I left him and got in my car, and they took off immediately upon me leaving the ship. I got in my car, and they disappeared within a matter of seconds, leaving a trail of flaming sparks up through the area. And the Baltimore and Washington papers carried that story of flying saucer or something was seen over the metropolis last evening, and they sent jets up to chase it, but they got away from them, something like that. And so I went on into Washington, reported into bowling field, and nothing happened. And approximately 6 months from that time, I got this voice again, and I almost forgotten about it by then. It said that the time is coming close, the time is drawing near. And the next day, or within a few days anyhow, I was called in for an interview. And I was sent with 3 other men to the Pentagon to compete for a position in the command post of the USAP headquarters, which is the most top secret organization in the Pentagon, where I'd be working in and out of the war room, the most top secret room in the world, where plans are for war are discussed, and all top secret material pertaining to anything you want to think of centers and filters through there. And these other 2 men, they did have an awful lot more time in service than I did, and they were more familiar with the type of work that was to be done than I. But when the final word came, I had been selected to fulfill this job. Well, I found it very interesting. I didn't have too much to do, and I liked that, being in the service. The generals would come in and have a big meeting, and I would put coffee cups down around the table and fill them full of coffee, and I'd sharpen their pencils, and when they were finished with their doodling, I would have to collect all of their doodles and burn them. They were considered top secret. And it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of free time, so I would spend my free time in their files, reading top secret material. Anything that pertained to unidentified flying objects was my meat, and they had a separate file for them. And they saw me spending an awful lot of my time, and several colonels questioned me on it. And I played into their little game, I suppose. And about 8 months later, I was discharged from that particular job. But I had found out just what I wanted to know. And I found out quite a bit. Some of it I can't talk of yet today. I don't know when I'll be able to, but I am held to that clearance until I'm cleared, and I'm not cleared as yet. But from the Pentagon, I don't believe they were finished with me in Washington, because they sent me to Andrews Field. That was only about 12 miles out of Washington. And Andrews Field, is, if you remember in the Kehoe books, was quite an active area for that particular time. When the saucers bombarded Washington, D.C., they were seen at Andrews Field and all over. Well, I went to Andrews Field, and I got a pretty nice job there. I was a manager of a airman's club, and I had a lot of time to do reading again. And I kept up with the flying saucer trend and talked and tried to make friends with people who were interested in it. And it was surprising the amount of people that were interested in it at that particular time, and the circles that I came into. One evening I was sitting next to a full general, or not a full general, a one-star general at a dinner party. And it was a group of people who were interested in flying saucers. It was a pretty well-to-do party. I mean, but everybody there were interested in flying saucers. And I didn't do any speaking at that particular time, because when you're in the service, you have to be careful what you say. You say the wrong thing, you can get into trouble, serious trouble. So I kept most of these things to myself. I did start writing back in '52 I hoped to have my book finished by the time I got out of the service, but I got a little lazy somewhere along the way. Writing a book is a pretty hard piece of work if you don't have too much education, and I don't have too much education as far as writing techniques and things of that type are concerned. And so things in Washington seemed to slow down quite a bit. And about 5 months before my next assignment came up, a friend of mine said, if you were to go somewhere, where would you really like to go? I said, well, I think I'll be going to Hawaii. I don't know. He said, you think you're going? I said, yes, I do. And I don't know what made me say what I did, but 6 months later I was at Hickam Field in Hawaii. It just seems as though I see these things in front of me, and I surprise myself sometimes when I say them. I keep asking myself, why did I say that? But I wait a little while and I find out that I was where I was supposed to be, I guess. Well, in Hawaii, the activity over there is really tremendous, and they have a saucer research group going on over there. Let's see, that's a Kualele Research Group is the name of it. A Kualele is the Hawaiian name for flying saucers. And it's very, very active. I was to one of their meetings. I had a little program. I couldn't say anything, but I had all of my books and all of my material, my collection there on display, and I would answer questions to people while I was over there with the Air Force. But Riley Crabb, who was the president of this organization, is doing a wonderful job, and they are getting crowds of 400, 500, 600, 700 people. And a lot of tourists hit that, playground for that kind of trade, and he holds his meetings at the Reef Hotel in Waikiki and at the Honolulu Library, which is quite large also. Well, after getting to Hawaii, I was subject to having crazy dreams. Well, they were crazy to the majority of people, I suppose, but they were quite interesting. And I found myself wanting to go to bed at night. I could hardly wait till the sun went down because I knew I'd have a nice dream tonight. It does seem a little humorous, but I mean, if you learn that way, it's a wonderful way of learning. And I've had some very interesting experiences dreaming. But But it all must have meant something because it was centered around things dealing with electronics, devices, how to build things. Constantly, this one man in my dreams, he kept haunting me, showing me something about an electric light bulb. And he showed me not the light itself or but something else that was being emitted from the light, that if it were harnessed it could mean a lot more than the electric, or the light that you see coming from it itself. It didn't make too much sense, but he kept coming back until it did make sense. And I talked it over with an electronics expert, and he said it sounded very, very clever. And during this time, I was making friends again in Hawaii and meeting all of the people in the know on flying saucers, and which led me to the home of one of the judges of the Honolulu District Court, and also to a home of the chief clerk of the Honolulu District Court. They were all quite interested in Ashtar and all of his friends, and the people in the important offices there were this one friend of mine. She was the secretary to the adjutant of the base, and she's about one of the most ardent flying saucer fans I think I've ever met. She has read everything that has ever been published, printed, or anything else, I believe. And she kept me up to date and kept pushing me along in my activity, in my research. I don't know if I wanted to try to outdo her or what, but I mean, we kept it going that way, and it was quite interesting. And then last December the 7th, I'm getting November the 7th. Last January the 7th of 1956, 1956, I have a piece of paper here. It was on the front page of the Honolulu Advertiser. It said, "Flaming flying saucer spotted at Buchanan Key." It said, "Honolulu was visited by a flying saucer last night, and it was absolutely the real thing," said a man who ought to know. Marty Myerson of New York City, who has been collecting sightings back to 1906 of civilian saucer intelligence, or for civilian saucer intelligence, has evaluated the report by an accredited military observer. We saw the thing for 45 minutes, the observer and his wife said. He and his wife and 5 others took turns holding binoculars on the beautiful 100-foot diameter perfect disc while it hovered over St. Louis Heights, then slowly came to the ground to a bare spot where there aren't any houses. The 7 watched brilliant red nucleuses surrounded with a glowing fringe which changed to a variety of colors. The object finally took off toward Cocahead, trailing glowing red sparks, the Kanaki observer said. I knew this boy that saw this here, and his wife and all of the other people I met them, and he supplied saucers, Max Miller's group in Los Angeles here, with a picture of supplying saucers over Honolulu. I think if you people get saucers, you know which one I mean. And the following day, on the 8th of January, naturally, the word got out pretty fast, and there were 15 of us saucer-minded people who gathered at the Waikiki Biltmore the following day, about 1:30, and we had planned to hike up into the wooded area on St. Louis Heights and to see if we could find any evidence of where the saucer came down. And it was raining. It was quite a miserable day. And we piled into about 3 automobiles and climbed up over this tremendous hill. It's Allen Castor, I think, Avenue or Boulevard or something. It almost goes straight up. And groaning in low gear, we didn't know whether we'd get there or not, but we finally did. And we got to approximately as close to the area as we possibly could, and we got out and started to walk. Well, some of them, they got a little scared because the only way to get into where we wanted to go was to plow through quite a bit of this prickly cactus, and it's quite heavy over there on the mountainsides. And I had on a pair of white shoes, and I didn't want to get my white shoes messed up, so I took them off. And I thought if any of my friends are around, I'll just sort of direct my feet to where I'm supposed to walk. And I didn't have any, I wasn't bothered with any cactus, and I walked practically all over it. But this Master Sergeant and we led the crowd through this mass of woods and cactus. And when we entered this one particular area, we noticed he and I both, we stopped and looked at each other, and he said, "Do you feel anything different?" I said, "Yes, I do." And I noted that on the back of at the back of my head, at the base of my spine, I had sort of a tingling sensation, and it did hurt. It hurt quite a bit. It seemed as though there were pressure of some sort, and I couldn't understand it. And he said, "Well, I have the same thing happening to me." And so we hurried on through then, and the other ones were quite a ways behind us. And we got out into this particular area where you could see his home, and started looking around. And over this one area you could see where all of the trees, the leaves had been turned over or turned around. You could pick it out. I mean, over the side of a mountain, it was quite easy to see where something came sweeping across and afforded enough of pressure or something there to twist the leaves around. And it directed it to a particular spot that was quite high up. And by that time, we thought we'd better wait until the rest of the people caught up with us. And we had a colonel with us who had, he didn't want anybody to know it, but he checked out a Geiger counter. He wanted to check the area for radioactivity. And about 2 days later, the OSI, that's the Air Force Gestapo, called me in and asked me who the colonel was that checked out the Geiger counter. They wanted to know about him, I guess. But I said I didn't know him. He was just in the group. But we did find slight traces of radioactiveness in that area now, in that particular area. I don't know if it was caused by the saucer or what, but the indicator did click pretty fast. And the rest of the group, they sort of wandered off to themselves, trying to climb up this one area. And I stood there with something like stars in my eyes, I guess, just amazed over this here. I just thought it was wonderful. And I had a little notebook, and I thought I would take it out and write down my impressions. That's just how I felt at that particular time. And the paper was getting wet, but I wrote, "On comes rain again. It seems funny that all of us has decided that we will find something here. I surely hope so. I have a strong feeling that the saucer set down on this very spot where I now stand, and I'm strongly impressed mentally that somebody is watching this group here now. If anyone is here who knows about this and is looking on, I want you to know that we are sincere and have a most earnest desire to be contacted by you. What better time than right now for all of us to see your saucer and for you to give us evidence and reassurance that we are not seeking in vain, trying to understand about your space visitors and your vehicles. Is this all possible? Won't you please lower your ship through the cloud and come into view?" I mean, that is what I wrote. I was impressed to write it, so I did. And after reading it over, I thought it was rather poetic. all of this here, more or less, was going through my mind. And I turned around and I saw someone stepping from behind a cactus. And I thought it was one of the others from the group that had come down to join me in my meditation. But I looked up and I didn't recognize the person. And he was quite a little distance from me. And he started coming toward me, and he spoke in a voice that sounded familiar. And I looked up, and it was Craigstan again. And he greeted me and said, with his good afternoon, and we talked about the many things that had happened over the past year and a half from the time I had seen him before, and of that particular sighting that was going on, that took place the evening before, and I tried to get him to go to the top of this hill with me to meet the other people. For some reason he declined. But the people up there, they looked down and they saw me talking to this gentleman, and they asked me afterwards who it was. And during the course of our little talk, which didn't last too long, he told about the many things that he had planned for the group to do, the flying saucer group in that area. It hadn't been formally organized. It had no name or anything. And he was interested, and he said the space people are quite interested in having groups of this type being formed all over the country, and with the intentions eventually for them all pooling their resources and becoming one group, something like Understanding here has in mind, I believe. And we discussed a few things that were of a personal nature, and all of a sudden I felt as though my blood sort of rushed from my head, and my eyes became as though somebody blew a bunch of smoke in them or something. And I lost my sight for just an instant, so it seemed, and rubbing my eyes, which had tears in them, and trying to look again to see where he was. When I got my eyesight back, he had disappeared. He was gone. I don't know. I'm not too much of an occult student of the occult sciences or metaphysics, but somebody said that it's quite possible that it might have been a projection of some kind, an astral projection. I don't know what it was. But at that particular time, if I would have reached over and touched him, I'm sure I would have felt flesh and bone just the same as I am. But as he disappeared, a cloud slipped back from the sun, and the sun rays came shining down through, and a feeling came over me that it just poured into me, just like maybe a cup might fill when it gets filled. I don't know, but I felt good. I felt elevated. I felt like God Himself had reached down out of heaven and touched me. I felt that wonderful. And so I quickly climbed up this slope to join the other ones to tell them of my experience. But the closer to the top I got, the more I was inclined not to. I was sort of inclined to just forget about it and mention it to two people who would be quite interested. And this I did. And when we reached the top of the hill, or when I reached the top of the hill, the other ones up there had found a pair of coveralls that were made in Baltimore, Maryland. And what they were doing on top of that mountain, I don't know. But right there in that cactus was this area that was burnt out. Just as though a tremendous amount of heat came down there and burnt this cactus to where the chlorophyll flowed down over the unburnt cactus. Now, it would take an awful strong heat to do something like that, I'm sure. I'm not up on that too much, but where the chlorophyll had run down over the unburned cactus, and the part that was burnt was just ash, and the ground, stone, everything else was quite burnt in that area. And the way this boy described the saucer coming down, that it was of a tremendous disc-shaped object, something very similar to what Truman Betham's flying saucer might have looked like. And it came down not this way, but came down on its side. It came straight down like a coin, like you'd stand a coin up on its edge. It came down that way, and he saw flashlight activity, he and his wife and these other people, and movement in that area that night before. And it just sort of looked as though somebody came climbing through the hill there in the mountains and peeled off a pair of coveralls and stepped out of them and stepped into something, and off they go. Now this happened in the evening, about 8:30 I think it was the time, somewhere after 8. And upon looking this area over, to the right of this area was a very large swastika. dug into the ground. Now that has a sort of, looks like, or goes back to a Dansky. I don't know why it reminds me of a Dansky, but I think he mentioned somewhere in his writings swastikas of some sort. But this gigantic swastika was turned over. It was about 2.5 to 3 feet wide and very regular. A very, very good job. Could it have been a sign? We didn't know. I don't know either. But we all picked up our shoes and I rolled down my pant legs and I had on a pretty expensive pair of pants. They said they were going to meet at the Waikiki Biltmore and I didn't want to look undressed. And I had ruined them in this red clay and mud and everything. And I rolled them down and we walked back down to the car feeling that we had accomplished our mission. And that ended the experience or the expedition the day after the saucers came to Honolulu. It was very, very exciting. It kept going though. More people were seeing saucers over Honolulu from the 1st of January to the 1st of June of this past the year 1956. There were over 600 reported sightings to the Air Force alone. Over 600 reported sightings. That's quite a few sightings a day. A number of planes have been missing. They go up and they don't come back. They search for them in the ocean. They can't find any oil slicks. One of our colonels here in Los Angeles, the 7th of November of this month, made a statement that there were over 1,600 planes missing in the last 2 years and over 2,000 men, pilots and men with the planes, missing also. He doesn't understand why. Do we have a good side and a bad side to this flying saucer? Myself, along with another a master sergeant from the Army, watched jets chase a saucer over the island. Well, we weren't alone. There were other people who reported seeing it, but he had called me and I ran outside and saw it also. Jets chasing this disc-shaped object at a very high altitude. They didn't fly into a cloud, but they went over a cloud. The disc came out, but I never saw the plane come out. And that evening, in the evening paper, it was reported, Marine missing, Marine pilot and plane missing. They were searching the area for where a plane goes into the ocean. They usually leave an oil slick or something. Nothing of that type was found. And it's not happening just every now and then, but it's happening every couple of days. My friend who worked at the wing adjutant's office, who was the secretary for the wing adjutant, or the base adjutant, I was having lunch with her one day, and this major joined us. And he used to kid us quite a bit about flying saucers. He said, well, have you seen any flying saucers lately? And we laughed and said, no. Because we knew how he felt, we felt sorry for him. And so he said, well, you know, last evening a very, very strange thing happened. I said, oh, yes, what? He said, well, I had to get some flying time in, and I told my wife I'd be a little late. But boy, was she burned up when I get home. He said, I went down to take the plane up, and I was grounded. He said they would allow nothing off the field for 4 hours, and nothing was allowed to come in. Everything was coming in on International, Honolulu International, which is adjoining Hickam Field, but they weren't allowing anything to come in on Hickam. There was a UFO over the field. It was dark, and it was prior to the H-bomb test in Bikini. And they had the atom bombs, I suppose, somewhere there. And the planes that were going to drop the bombs were at Hickam Field. And they had guards of all kinds around them. I know I lost some of the men out of my office. They had to do special duty to go down and guard these planes. And I was talking to not one of them, but several of the boys, and they say that they told me they saw an inverted cone of light over this one particular ship, this dark blue ship, the one that I believe was supposed to drop the bomb, this H-bomb, or one of the H-bombs. An inverted cone of light over that ship. This happened about 2 days before the actual test drop, before they flew down to that area. And he said, this one boy said, I had scared to daylights, and I called for the corporal of guard, and he didn't come, and so he fired a rifle. He shot up into the air and got court-martialed for doing it. But he was scared. He didn't know what was coming off. He never saw light to look like that. It wasn't coming from the ground, but it was coming down from something that he couldn't see above him. Those things are going on over in that particular area of the world, and there I was, right in the middle of it. And I hated to leave, but my discharge was up the 30th of September, and so I left for the States about the last part of August. And upon returning to the States, I find out that we were all supposed to be visited on the 7th of November by some more, but I was working that night. I can't say anything about that, whether they came or not. I didn't see any. It was a little funny, though. I watched the skies that the entire day, and I noticed the Air Force were quite concerned. The day before, there wasn't any overcast. It was very, very clear. But November the 7th, there was overcast, and quite a bit of it. It was all vapor trails. They had planes up there for something. I don't know what. And the following day, the 8th of November, it was nice and clear again. So I believe the Air Force expected something. Maybe they chased him away. I don't know. It's quite possible that they did come in and knew that if they were to show themselves, that we would pursue and possibly somebody might get killed, and they didn't want that to happen. That's how I've explained it away. And but before I left Hawaii, a flying saucer landed in my backyard. Not a flying saucer. I didn't know what it was until I got out to it. But I was quite concerned about studying things of this nature, so I took a room with a colonel. He was the base commander. I thought he would be a good person to talk to and get acquainted with. And so he had 3 little children, and he needed a babysitter and someone to mow his yard, so I applied for the job. And I had a private room and a bath. That's something the other guys did. And I had a private entrance. I could do my own washing. It was right outside my room. It was very, very convenient, and my library was growing quite fast, so I had to have someplace to put my books. And the guys in the barracks, every time I'd get a book, they'd tear the pictures out of it and go around and show them to each other. I couldn't control it too much, but I tried to. I didn't want to create any hard feelings because it was just a couple dollars for the book. And I thought it might help them to understand that there were such things as flying saucers, so I let them go ahead and tear it. But I took this room. It was very, very nice and very convenient, and I pursued the study into the occult sciences and spiritualism. I don't think I missed anything after that. And one evening, the colonel had gone away, and I was babysitting, and I was a little tired. I think I mowed the yard that day, and I put the children, they were quite young, I put them all to bed. And I was sitting on the back porch looking up into the heavens, and it was really, really beautiful. The sun had just gone down, and it wasn't quite dark, but it wasn't daylight. And as I was sitting there, a streak of light seemed to go across Pearl Harbor at a very high altitude, and I thought that time, that is a flying saucer. I wonder where it's going. And I looked up into the sky. I didn't give it too much thought, and looked beyond it and tried to look beyond the stars. I was inspired that in doing so, one might find, or one might even see God, or His beauty, or whatever you might be seeking. If you could project your mind to such a dimension, to way beyond the stars. I was in a real mood that evening, I guess. And so I thought, well, I better get to bed, because I had to get up quite early to get to work, and it was a little walk to where I worked. And while I was getting ready for bed, a flashing object. I thought it was lightning, but then I remembered that they don't have thunderstorms in Hawaii, believe it or not. And I've never seen any thunder or heard any thunder or saw any lightning over there. And then I dismissed it as being a jet. It must have been a jet that passed over. But then I said, well, I didn't hear any noise. But it illuminated quite a bit of the area around where we lived. So I just dismissed it from my mind. I went on to bed. And when I did, I was thinking about, I wonder if it could have been a saucer and this and that, and trying to still my mind for sleep. And suddenly I slipped into sort of a dream state. I don't know what it was. And I looked up, and there stood Crextown again. And he said, come, I have something to show you. And I looked back at my body. Now, this has baffled me. I can't understand it. Maybe I read too many books. I don't know. But I looked back and I saw my body lying there, and I was quite disturbed about it. And he said, come, we don't have too much time. And at that particular time, my body left the bed, and I seemed to be absorbed with it anyhow. It wasn't there any longer. And I found myself walking out the back door and across the cool, crisp grass to this spaceship that was it was near the ground in the back of the Colonel's house in this lot. And this object here, it was around, it looked like a big pearl sitting there. And it was rather large for something of that particular size. I mean, for that particular area of the world, everything over there is rather small, the islands and everything. But I was quite flabbergasted. I didn't know how to go about this, and I was a little scared again. What would the military think? Here I am living at a full colonel, the base commander's home. What's going to become of this? Is this real? I couldn't quite understand it. And he said, come on, we must hurry. And we entered, and this time I left the planet Earth, and I didn't go too far. And we went to a gigantic spacecraft that hovered somewhere in that vicinity, I suppose, and entered this conference aboard this mothership, and it was quite interesting. I met people from many of the various planets, and I was quite intrigued by this one particular person who claimed he was from the planet Pluto. He was a real weird-looking person. I mean, he was human and all of that, but I mean, he was very, very sinister-looking. It's the word but he seemed very, very nice. I go into quite a bit of detail also explaining the interior, and this ship was controlled by the mothership. It had a magnetron through the center. The force field was directed to the ship, and it was either put on or shut off. If it was put on, it went down. If it was shut off, it went up. And within a few seconds after the door closed, we were going up. And the magnetron, upon entering, glowed sort of a onyx. It looked like sort of a brownish orange stone. And upon acceleration, it glowed a very, very, very brilliant red. It was very, very beautiful. The interior of the ship, I saw no light of any kind. I mean, any visible light or source of light. But the interior of the ship glowed a very blue-purple to begin with. And as the color of the magnetron in the center increased its color to the more brilliant red, it seemed to get more of a purplish white. There were no seats to sit upon. There was sort of something that looked like seats around the outside of it, but we stood still, and I was told to stand still, and our feet, or my feet did anyhow, sunk into the floor. Sort of something similar to a sponge rubber, but it wasn't sponge rubber, I know that. Something similar to take up the shock from leaving. There was a certain amount of sensation there to begin with, but as we kept climbing, it seemed to wear off. And it was just a matter of minutes before we were up into this mothercraft. The way of entry into the mother craft was sort of like if you were to drop a pea in a bowl of soup or something, I guess, or a bowl of gravy. It just sort of slipped in and sealed itself off. So I was told. I mean, that was the explanation that was given to me. What was involved in the conference, I hope to hold off on that and put it in my book, because I think it's a very interesting piece of news for saucer research. It sure opened my eyes on a lot of things, and a lot of things that I knew about, but I didn't understand. I lacked understanding. Was revealed to me at that time. And after we left, we were there for about 3 hours. I came back, and I remember coming into the house and going back to bed. And when I got awake in the morning, I was in my dungarees, and the back door was open, which I never do. I always lock the back door. But it bothered me an awful lot. I didn't know whether this was another dream or what. It was so real. It was so very, very real. And I thought, I didn't want to say it was a dream, but that was the only way I could explain it. That was the only way I could understand it. It must have been a dream. Well, shortly afterwards, I got a letter from a woman who I didn't know. She lived somewhere in Washington, the state of Washington, and she said, I have a message for you from Ashtar, that you have been quite concerned over your experience, and here I'll read his letter, and then I guess I'd better close you. People are getting a little cold out there, I know. It says, My dear friend, although you have personally made a very good and dependable contact with some of your space friends, I am of the opinion that a personal letter from me will not come amiss, and will be followed up by a more direct contact when suitable conditions prevail, and I have the time to spare. This does not in any way imply a lack of interest on my part, but that you have stored in your superconscious mind the memory of the conference you attended, and which you remember in part. You will realize the tremendous responsibility devolving upon me to concentrate my undivided attention on the various strategic points where my men are directing the activities of the units under their command. I have heard excellent reports of you, both in regard to your work in your official capacity, your personal influence, and more particularly your receptibility to suggestions mentally conveyed to you by the very fine group of invisible associates who have been attracted to you through the magnetism of your personality and your sincerity. Or perhaps singleness. That's in parentheses. I don't even know what it means. But Curtis would express it better. I am asking my scribe, Mrs. H., to send you a folio containing all communications she has transcribed at my direction since I have first made contact with her through our mutual friend C.N., who has been a personal friend of mine for a score of years or more, and has been her own guardian and sponsor for over 30 years. We spacemen have a way of getting around, as you would say, and making friends in a great many different ways in different places. Here's hoping our friendship may be a long and pleasant one and lead to many worthwhile experiences in the near future. Do not try to force this DSP, just let it flow naturally, and goes on. My hand in everlasting friendship, signed Ashtar. I was really flabbergasted after reading that. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I was quite proud in getting a letter from one who called himself Ashtar, because I had read his books, or his proceedings, or whatever you would call them, in Days to Come, I think they are. And they were very, very interesting. But here I got a personal letter from him, and I was really flabbergasted. And so it caused me to think a little more concerning the experience I did have, and try to remember as much as I possibly could to pass on to the people who would someday want to read about it. And in my book, The Night Has 1,000 Saucers, I hope to present those facts. And that is about all I have time for this evening, folks. I hope I haven't been too much of a bore. And if I get a chance, I hope to go back this way again. Or a few announcements I'd like to make. Mr. George Zansky has just made contact again. with flying saucers. I'm sure you people will be hearing about it in the near future. And see, there's something else. Oh yes, I have a contact coming up pretty soon, so I understand. So if it happens, why I'll be sure to put Ramona on my list. And if any of you people would be interested in taking a flying saucer ride sometime in the future, maybe we can have it arranged. Okay, well, thanks very much.
It's usual to have a short question and answer period afterwards. Would you care to spend
insurance at all, Paul, because a waiter can out in Hollywood, crowd of quite a few people, and their minds are 1,000,000 miles away from the SC homecoming. And Jim, will you cut to Unit 4?
Yes, take Unit 4.
They're thinking about Mars. They expect the flying saucer to arrive from there between 10 and 10:30 tonight. And let's see how they're prepared to welcome it. Now, we want to meet some of these people, and somewhere in that crowd, Jim, is Mr. Gabriel Green, the president of the Interplanetary Study Group. Do you think you can pick him out for us? I don't see him yet. These are all the people who are waiting for the saucer's arrival tonight. That's him right there, Jim. Mr. Green?
Yes.
How are you tonight?
Fine, Mr. Coates.
All these people are your followers?
Well, they're not exactly followers. I think most of them are believers in flying saucers.
And would you explain a little better than I did, perhaps, the purpose of this gathering tonight?
The purpose is to await the expected visit of the spacecraft from another world, who is supposed to show up at 10:30 tonight. It might arrive a little bit sooner. That's why we're out here.
Well, now, what makes you so sure that it'll be coming tonight?
Well, we've been told by the space people that they'll be over tonight. For the last 6 or 8 months, we've been aware of this and been looking forward to this very momentous event.
And how were you told by these space people?
By a series of especially prepared tape recordings that they have sent directly from Mars, relayed through a spacecraft, and received down here in Los Angeles.
I've been told that you have some of these tapes with you tonight. Are they tapes, did you say?
Tape recorded messages,
yeah,
yes.
Well, the messages, anyway. Do you have some of them with you this evening?
We sure do.
I wonder if we could hear just a few minutes of them.
Certainly.
Jim, can we pick that up?
Would you like to hear them now?
Yeah, please.
Go ahead, turn it on. This is our tape recorder.
Have we got that turned on, Jim? I'm not getting it here.
This is a message from Mars. Is it on?
Yes, ma'am. From station KRI on the planet which you call Mars. I wish to state the following. We of the Space Confederation approach your people in deep and reverent friendship.
Did he speak to you in English?
Yes, ma'am. Sure I did. The King's English. Yes, ma'am?
How were they attired?
Normal dress. Everyone that I have seen so far had no fancy clothes or nothing extraordinary to make them stand out. Yes.
Did you know anything about the one of our ships that was held in suspension last January out there in Hawaii for 4 hours?
I heard something of that, and that was the same day this particular ship disappeared. Now, what else went on, I don't know. There was so much happening at that particular time that it was quite hard to keep up with all of it. But I know I went to the PIO, which is the Public Information Office, to try to get some facts and to try to get a story through them that I had written for a magazine, and they wouldn't approve it. And he said, "You people and your flying saucers," he said, he showed me 2 file cabinets. He said, "We have filled them in 6 months." So,
what?
2 file cabinets. And he said, "We have filled those 2 file cabinets in 6 months of reports." Yes.
Did they offer you any food? Did you see any of that food at all? Food?
No, nothing in that night at all.
What was the significance of this cold light inverted, you said?
I don't know. I can't explain that, but it was seen by a number of boys at Hickman Field.
You mean the point was down?
The point was down, yes.
Don't you think that might have been nullifying the effects of the bomb? Wasn't that the point?
Well, I don't know if the bomb was in the plane, but it might have had something to
It
do
might
with
have
it.
still nullified the effects of the...
Yes,
I mean,
it's quite possible.
The bomb was placed there afterwards.
Yes, sir.
We saw that same thing outside Cleveland, outside near Lorraine, Ohio.
Oh, is that right?
In 53, about the middle of March, in the cone shape. It was quite large.
Yes, they
It's
said.
all orange, all fiery color.
And after the cone, the object or whatever was producing the cone or whatever was producing the light evidently had disappeared. It took about 45 minutes until this cone just melted a little at a time. It melted away. It didn't just go out. And that really shook him up. Yes, ma'am?
The fact that you saw your etheric body that was perfectly normal, you all know. And you saw it on the bed.
Well, I didn't know what it was, but it...
Perfectly normal.
Well, I hope so.
And you're still babysitting. When was your first contact? What month and year was your first contact?
The first one that I ever saw, I mean, actually, with physical eyes, was in September of 1945, but I didn't know what it was.
And when was your first contact?
It was in September 1952.
That was near Washington.
Yes.
Would we deduce from the letter from Ashton that you really did have the physical experience?
Well, that's what I hoped for, anyhow. I didn't know. But out of the clear blue sky, I get this letter, and I have received many others from him, personal letters. I also receive every now and then some of his proceedings, I guess you might call them, from he and other ones. And I think they're all very wonderful. They're serving a purpose, definitely. Yes, sir?
What planet is your friend from?
They're planet Venus and Mars, and, well, they were from all of the planets within this universe, on the ones that I had met at the conference. But Crextan, he claims he is from the planet Venus. It must be very, very beautiful over there, the weather said. Yes, madam?
This letter you got from Ashton, that written through someone else?
Yes, that was written through this Mrs. Hill in Colville, Washington. Yes, sir.
We heard a lady speak about this incident over Hawaii, and she said that the spaceship at that time reached from Diamond Head to Pearl Harbor, about 16 miles. And there was a lot of them that saw it, she said, and that the plane that disappeared, or they just held it in suspension in the air.
Well, the object I saw was very, very high. I mean, there were clouds in the area. It looked as though they might have gone in the clouds, but they were way above the clouds. So the object came out, but the plane didn't. And I asked a few questions, and I always got the same runaround. Prior to my discharge, it was almost like, I'm not married, but I know that being in the service, you see guys with their wives, and whenever you go on sick call, you see a lot of women sitting around. I was getting to be that way with the OSI. It's the Office of Special Investigation of the Air Force. Every time you looked around, I was heading off to the OSI. They wanted to ask some more questions. And I was told, a finger pointed right at my nose and told to shut up and be careful and you clear this and you don't say that and you don't. I was told what to do, how to do, and everything else. So I was asked to talk a few times at some of the lectures or some of the programs they had in the way, but I never did because I knew what a friend of mine. They had him in a mental institute right now, and he taught on plans. He was a master sergeant for Army. Yes, sir?
Is the mission of all of these people to the earth friendly mission?
Yes, very, very friendly. But it seems as though we do have forces or people, not forces. They are actually people, as human as you and I, that have other intentions in mind also that are coming through, and sometimes they are the ones who cause the various things to happen that we would normally say was a terrible thing or something like that. Yes?
Do you happen to know anything about the cable between the mainland and Hawaii being, it wasn't broken, it was, the messages did not run. It started like, stop. Stop. The fleet, like the force field of mothership could have been on it, so the messages could not have been used. It said it was the first time that I heard that it was the first time that had happened since the building of the laying of the cable.
That's quite possible that they would be interested, and they are interested in our communications. Now, I was told when I was reading things of a secret nature, that my mind and my thoughts were being edited or whatever. Yeah, they were. My mind wasn't my own, I guess. But it was being used, yes. And perhaps it was directed to the right ones.
You were transmitting to them when you were
yes,
reading.
Yes, that's the word I was trying to
Yes,
get.
there's very great danger of those of us whose minds are not in complete control by ourselves to be used by forces that are not true and good.
Very definitely.
I think we should learn from this that we should be very awake to what's happening. I mean, if we go to sleep at all,
yes,
we should protect ourselves by asking for higher forces too.
Very good. Yes, sir.
What do they plan to do here?
Well, it has been presented to the people of the world many, many times in the past number of years through various mediums of books and different things. And if you read your Bible, you will find out, I am including a chapter in my book about spacemen in the Bible. And if you go back to the beginning, I think it's in the 5th chapter of Genesis where they speak of the men of old and the men of renown that came down out of the heavens, and they saw the daughters of earth as being fair, and they took unto them these daughters as their wives. I believe that before this planet was inhabited, that there was a particular type of evolution going on here in the animal kingdom, and some of these animals were walking upright, and we are perhaps their ancestors. And these men who were colonizing this particular planet, maybe away, being lonely and away from home, and they found the daughters as being quite fair, and they took them as wives, and they reared a race of people that way. And then it says, then God breathed into man. He gave him a living soul after this happened. I mean, that's how I interpret the Bible. And if I know it's happened, if you go someplace and you get into trouble, and through this trouble you haven't, maybe there's what people would call an illegitimate child brought into the world, you would be quite concerned. And every now and then, whenever perhaps you had an extra $5 or $10 or $20 bill, you might send it in that direction. Well, I think it's a similar situation. Maybe we are the illegitimate children here on this world, on this planet, and in time of need and distress, we are being helped by our ancestors who lived on other planets. I mean, I don't know, that doesn't, if that isn't a very good presentation, I don't know. But reading my chapter in Genesis, I'm inclined to read between the lines and pick that out. It's mentioned quite often in the Bible.
In Theosophy, I read an explanation there of thoughts in the gallery picture of the universe, where all thoughts are there permanently. I just wondered if you looked into that in on their investigation.
Well, I haven't done too much in that particular field. It's flying saucers seems to be growing into such a tremendous field that you have to know everything or you don't know anything about saucers. Yes, sir?
Have they said anything about the future, such as the possibility of a war, or anything about the polar split?
There is mention has been made of this planet turning into a new sun in this universe, and that a system of evacuation is being studied at the present time. And as it says in the Bible again, some will be taken, others left. And perhaps you people who belong to understanding, maybe you are some of the chosen ones. I don't know. I don't know if I am. I hope to be. But it seems as though religion is a wonderful thing. Religion can be a man's money in his pocket. And it can be something that's good and good for humanity. It can be what people call God. But the way I was brought up in religion or Christianity, I'm inclined to believe a certain amount of it, but not all of it. And I think a lot of it is misinterpreted. And most of it's symbolic, and it means something, and it's for us to find out that. And to each person it might mean something different in order for them to grow in understanding. Yes?
Several of us heard a tape recording last evening of regression. Do you feel that this type of practice is helpful in gaining at the end of raising our consciousness, our Christ consciousness within, to develop us into maybe being on a higher level than the saucer people want us to do, that so many people are going and coming? Maybe I can't.
Well, it all depends upon the person.
Maybe I don't do it right.
There are many ways to go from here to New York City. You can walk, that's a slow way, or you can fly, that's a fast way. If it's fast for you to be regressed, to attain that divinity or that knowledge that you're seeking, well then you can have someone regress you. I mean, that's how I would look at it.
No, but is that a process that would happen? That would happen, I mean, to the person. And to go backwards and just to go forward. You have to go backwards in order to go forward or something.
Sometimes, you know, if you pull
what I mean is there any good of it to come out?
Sometimes when you park too close to the curb, you have to back up before you can pull out and get anywhere, so it might apply the same way there.
Well, at least it was valuable. We got a lot of information on the life of Mars 62,000 years ago.
That sounds quite fascinating.
It was interesting that nothing happened. I asked a question a little while ago about the polar flip and the war, and I think you I should have only asked one question. You mentioned about the polar flip. I don't think you said anything about the war.
Well, war is something that I don't like to talk about too much of it because I've been in one of them, and almost while I was in the Korean, not in the Korean situation, but I was in the service during that time. I don't look forward to it, and I hope no one else does. I think that we turn our attention to something that's good and lift up our eyes to God, lift our consciousness to higher, think of peace, and our thoughts will all go that direction, and I think war may be averted if everybody keeps thinking along the same lines. I surely hope so. It's not nice to see someone get killed or die or something. Well, I guess we better leave you people go home. One question in the back.
I wanted to ask about the space people. In physical appearance, are they similar to us, or are there distinctive features, more or less?
Well, Crexton was about a person of my same height, and features, with the exception he had, I shouldn't say this. He had beautiful teeth, very beautiful teeth. They were his own. And he had very big eyes, extremely large eyes. Not to where they were very obvious, but people would say, "My goodness, that person has very large eyes."
Was his hair long?
No, just cut the same as mine. Yes, Sharon.
When did George Adams make his last contact?
I think it was this month, sometime, the first part of this month, as near as I understand.
Was it down in Old Mexico?
No, it was up here in the desert someplace. Yes, sir.
Did they have lines in their face the same as we eat?
I beg your pardon, sir?
Did they have lines in their face the same as we?
Oh, yes. The facial characteristics were all the same. I mean, yes, wrinkled and yes.
When you were at this conference, were the people, did they all seem rather youthful, or were they different ages?
Well,
you could distinguish?
You know, if you have something that's old, it still is beautiful. I mean, not old in appearance, but you know it's old, but it's still beautiful and youthful looking and new looking. Something, an atmosphere of that particular type, perhaps. And they were all very, very loving type of people. I mean, you didn't even have to talk, and knew that it was just something that went between you, a fellowship or communion of something inwardly that seemed
inner beauty.
It was really beautiful, and we sat around and watched color. It seemed to be very, very predominant with them. And they had this color on the screen that went through many, many beautiful forms of all different colors coming together. And then it was with music. And the music and the color seemed to mean something to them. And it was very, very beautiful to watch. And it would take one into a stillness within himself, that you could go within yourself and not feel alone, but the whole group felt as one.
Yeah.
And you were all thinking the same thing.
That's one mind there.
Yes.
Do you think they're trying to teach us their way of life?
Very definitely. Very definitely. That is why groups such as this are being formed. Yes, ma'am.
Did they experience death?
That I didn't talk anything about. I don't like to talk about things like that. I mean, death is an interesting thing that you understand, but I don't know too much about it. Maybe I've never died before. Maybe I'm never right Mercury. I guess we better close for now. It's getting a little late, and